Hey Johnny,
What's up,
hi.
man? Sorry about that.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. So, I was just telling my audience here how we have a fabulous gentleman joining us soon from Denver, and it's a good morning to you from India.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So, Johnny, to begin with, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself first. Tell me like two lines about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, I am a men's lifestyle coach. So I primarily work with men and just supporting them and figuring out, first what areas of their life they need to heal. Secondarily, kind of creating a greater sense of purpose in their lives, so they know what direction to go in. And then number three, just making sure that not only are they achieving their wildest hopes and dreams, but they're also very fulfilled, because what's the point of doing all of this and doing life and being successful if you're not happy at the end of the day, right? So
That's awesome, man. And I think the true measure of success is how happy you are, you know?
amen. Amen. Yeah, I think we see too many people in the public who are, again, successful financially, and yet they're very, very unhappy with themselves and
Hmm.
with life. And I think that's probably the biggest shame that you could probably ever live. So
Yeah, yeah. So how do how did you get in this domain, so to say?
I think it was just from watching my parents, to be totally honest. Growing up,
Hmm.
both of them were very overweight. My mom ultimately got cancer and passed away in 2006.
Sorry about that, man. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, me too. But I always say that our lives are either an example of what's possible, or it's a warning to others. And my mom was an amazing mother, but in terms of her physical health as well as my dad's physical health, it was a warning of what not to do. Which is why I take such good care of myself today, because I was like, what again? What's the point of living life if you don't take care of your body
Hmm.
and then get sick or have disease, right? So
Yeah,
that
there's
that
this saying, right? Health is wealth.
uh, couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And so I think that was interesting to see my mom pass away, see all the material wealth that my father had accumulated for her and everything. Of course, we don't take any of it with us. So it
Hmm.
just was very interesting to look around and say, what is this all for? And then shortly thereafter, excuse me, shortly thereafter, my father lost a bunch of weight. And I started wondering why he now was able to get healthy after she passed away.
Hmm.
Um, and so that, amongst so many other details, led me to realizing that their physical health was kind of directly proportional to their mental health and how they were interacting in their marriage. And that allowed me to start a gym in St. Louis 10 years ago, and I opened multiple gyms, just helping women primarily, actually. So I worked with
Hmm.
women for 8 years, and then just in the last 2 years, I've kind of switched over and rebranded myself as working with men.
All right. So your lifestyle coaching started with typically a fitness or a health coaching, and
Yeah,
now
that's
you
how
have
it started.
integrated now into also the well-being,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
fitness is a part of well-being.
yeah. It's the foundation, right? It's the
Hmm.
foundation. Because if you don't have
Yeah.
that, then you can't even begin to. Well, it works mental health, emotional health, physical health, but then how can you work on your career or your mission in life, your calling in life, and then how are you going to even work on being a spouse, or a
Hmm.
parent if you don't have your physical body in in alignment. So I think that's the very foundation of the work that I do. That's where I start. If a guy or a woman are really not healthy physically, mentally, then that's where we start first.
Got it. So, given that you first, kind of addressed the physical health concern first, what was the transition there, or the integration into the mental health then? How did that, come into play?
Comes into play because so many people that I started working with were just doing diets,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously here in the US, like there's so many people that are overweight and unhappy and
Mm-hmm.
using food to control their emotions. Food it's just used as a drug, essentially. It's their
Mm-hmm.
coping mechanism, right? So if they're stressed out, they eat food to make them feel more comfortable and safe. If they're
Mm-hmm.
bored, then they eat food to create more of an adventure, you know? If they're lonely, they eat food to connect with themselves and make them. So food is kind of used to fulfill so many emotional needs. And that was where I was really kind of cluing into. And that's where my passion was, to realize that my parents, they didn't have a eating issue. They had a
Mm-hmm.
connection issue, that the only thing that they really connected over was food and travel and the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But their love, that they struggled to get their needs met, was where food kind of became a very easy, you know, uh, like I said, coping mechanism to at least make things feel okay for the time being. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for sharing your story here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have honestly been very passionate about the personal development, self-development field, where
Mm-hmm.
I have read more than 127 books in this regard, and I came to a point where, so I was born and brought up in India,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the States for a bit. I came to study there, and then I came back. I joined my family business, and there was this sense of fulfillment that was kind of lacking. Given
Yeah,
that the kind of life that I had, the kind of lifestyle I had, the kind of cars that I was driving, the kind of career, business, house, everything sorted, man. Like with the grace
yeah,
of God, I count my
yeah,
stars every day here in India. And you've also been to India, and you see how there's a huge gap between the rich and the poor here, and how you can kind of live with ease in a country
yeah,
like India.
yeah.
So that's where my journey began. I started looking at what is it? I got everything right on a silver platter. I'm born in this awesome family.
Mm-hmm.
So what is missing here? That's what my search started, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how it began. And I studied, I read books, I joined workshops, and here I am. I'm particularly mentoring millennials,
It's awesome.
where you very rightly said, because today I would say 80% people are connecting over food and travel. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So there is a sense of depth that I believe is kind of missing, that's gone missing here. There's a lot more to it, but then that's where the hard work comes in. That's where things that would take time and effort comes in. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, what's your journey been like? What kind of challenges have you overcome in the last few years, and how did you do that?
I would say probably right in line with what you were saying. I built enough of a steady income and lifestyle here in Colorado that I was happy with that, but then I was deeply unfulfilled with my work. And
Mm-hmm.
I could see on paper I had all of the ingredients to be quote unquote successful, and yet I had no drive. The thing that was really missing was drive. I had no motivation whatsoever, and I knew though that when it comes to like exercise and other areas of my life, I can I'm a hard worker. I can be very committed and follow through on stuff. And I was wondering why I was so unfulfilled, even though life, from social media probably looked really
Yeah,
good.
looks awesome, man.
Yeah, and so I think I really in 2018 I joined a mastermind,
Mm-hmm.
and joined a really good group of people, and I kind of traveled around the United States once a quarter, meeting with them, and each of those masterminds was so difficult because I was sitting down with people who were, they're really struggling because they've hit a $30,000 per month, maximum in their business, and I'm thinking like $30,000 a month, like that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, but of course everyone wants to level up. It's never good enough. And so my struggle was like, I'm not even making nearly that much money. I
Hmm.
don't even know what I was doing, but where's the fulfillment? I would rather be fulfilled
Hmm.
and not make the money than to make money and not be fulfilled. So that was the real drive these last 2 years, which is like, I need to figure this out. And I'm willing to go back to corporate America. I'm willing to go back to a normal day to, 9 to 5 job. I'll do whatever it takes to find that happiness. And that's where I was doing, truthfully, a lot of praying and a lot of listening. And I heard 3 different people within a span of like 6 weeks tell me, 3 people who didn't know each other tell me specifically that I should work with men. And that's why I was like, when you hear it once, you're like, okay. You hear it twice, you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you hear it a third time, I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's a
God,
sign from the universe, the
yeah,
universe, God is telling you, go
yeah.
this way, yeah?
So I was super scared to step into stuff working with men, but I'd say shortly thereafter did I realize that was what I was missing in life, was that level, that purpose and that commitment, and that allowed me to actually I'm more fulfilled than I've been in my entire life and clear on my purpose. But it was probably the very thing that I've been avoiding all my life to
That is
discuss.
such a gift, yeah. That is such a gift, that feeling, and having that feeling coming from that level of fulfillment is where you can really be a space of contribution to
Yeah.
other human beings. And here, since you're contributing to other men, I would say it's the gift that you are, that you can share with others, and inside of you they get, I would say, inspired or motivated to be what they want to be, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the pain that I went through and the struggles and the
Hmm.
failed relationships all boil down to my deepest wound, which was me growing up without much of a father. You know,
Hmm.
he was there, but he was working. He was a workaholic. He was always, so he's done well financially, but by the time I was 30 years old, I had no desire to have him in my life whatsoever, you know. So I think that was a big part of it, was realizing that I was, again, on paper, things looked a certain way, but I was so ready to be done with all of it. And I think that's where you find a lot of men in
Hmm.
today's life, where you've got the nice things and the cars and all the stuff and the nice suits, and
Hmm.
it looks like you're successful, and yet these men are committing suicide 6 times more often than women. They're obviously at the forefront of bombings and killings and flying planes into buildings, and it's like, why are men sacrificing themselves because they're so unfulfilled and so unhappy? And I think that's a big part of my work that I'm doing.
That is amazing. That is
Yeah.
amazing. So, you also, so is that also part of what you wanted to talk about, how to win the day by creating a bulletproof plan? Is that part of what you also, kind of mentor other men
Yeah.
with, or
Yeah,
can you tell more
absolutely.
about that?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if I kind of imagine where I was 10 years ago, which is like coming off of a failed marriage. I quit my job. I didn't know what I wanted to do in the world. All I knew was that I didn't want to go backwards.
Hmm.
Like the past was way scarier than at least failing forward. But I had no real idea with what I needed to do. And truthfully, what I found was, it's one thing to sit down and think, okay, I need to have a bigger vision. I need to have a clear purpose of that vision. But truthfully, in that moment, it was really hard for me to even believe in tomorrow, because I was just struggling to get through today, if that makes sense. So for me, it's like, for you to be able to, gain enough momentum, let's say in terms of like a plane, to actually create enough lift to soar off into the sky, man, you have to have enough runway to get, and for me, if you're going down the runway and you're running into wounds and trauma and things that trigger you, and you're getting pissed off, or you're drinking too much alcohol, or you're addicted to pornography, or whatever those like things in the way, so that you have to keep slowing down or keep moving, you're never going to be able to get enough momentum to take off. So the whole idea of like supporting men and quote unquote winning the day is just getting them to focus on like, what is going to get you happy, what's going to allow you to create enough space in your bandwidth here, so that you can cut out some of the bad habits. You can take care of yourself, more of your mental and your physical health, so that you can actually, like I said, create enough lift to where you're off into the sky and you're doing the things that maybe you feel like you were always called upon doing, but there's a part of you that always doubted, you know? So that's why you have to start with the macro before you go, start off with the micro before you can go to the macro of what you can do for the world. But so many people are attempting to be social media influencers, all this stuff, when they're still really hurting so much inside. They're not taking care of themselves first. You know, they're hoping that once they become successful or once they become known, then they'll be happy. Right? They're going about it the wrong way. It's like the chicken or the egg. It's kind of, they're going about it the wrong way, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 situation. However, you mentioned how, you know, all the distractions that there are to get through the day.
Yeah.
I also am of the opinion that a lot of people today don't know what they want in life. So what is that one thing that will make you happy? Does that make sense? So you got to have those distractions to just get through the day, so to say.
Completely agree. And I feel like what makes someone happy, well, I learned it from Tony Robbins, and he talks about like what ultimately is going to make anyone happy is a life that's based off of contribution and growth. If you're constantly growing as a human being and you're contributing to something greater than yourself, you know, like the secret to living is giving. It's all about giving. But for me, I could never even get there because I was running into all my pain, my stories that I'm not good enough. And I still run into it, but it's getting better and better and better, right? So from that standpoint, it's just kind of unlayering all the crap that we put on ourselves about who we are as individuals. And when we're able to heal that, then we can actually focus more on a life of contribution and growth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so if you focus more on giving, like you say, or if you focus more on, you know, like there's also saying living is giving, like you said, and you know, given we are coming from that perspective, providing value to people and or providing you know, contribution to people, that is one way to get through the day. But then what is the bulletproof plan here? What was the bulletproof plan that you were talking about?
It's pretty simple from the standpoint of it's simple to understand. Sometimes it's harder to actually implement, you know, just takes time. It's like, how do I get healthier? Well, you exercise and you eat right? Yep. Everyone knows it. That's the science of getting healthier, but the art of sustaining it has to do more with your level of fulfillment. So it's like, for me, it's like just starting off with a lot of people focus on their morning routines. I can never get to my morning routine unless my evening routine is dialed in. So I need to make sure I'm not watching Netflix. I need to make sure that I go to bed on time, that I have my one thing or 1 to 3 things already clear about what I need to accomplish tomorrow, to make sure that tomorrow is, I just think about like, okay, this time tomorrow before I'm going to bed, what's the one thing I have to do that'll allow me to feel like I lived on purpose, or I lived a good life.
Like you accomplished something today.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge part of having that level of fulfillment. Otherwise, we wake up and there's text messages and emails and we just start reacting to things. I spent like a decade or more living that way, where at the end of each day, I'm like, I don't even remember what I did today, you know? So, you know, my girlfriend or whoever would be like, well, how's your day? And I was like, I cannot even remember what I did. And that's their first sign that something needs to change and that we're not being very intentional about what it is that we want to accomplish. So evening routine, morning routine, that kind of really sets you up, whether it be meditation and movement and various other things. I make it as quick as I can, otherwise I get overwhelmed. But then I need to be very clear about what I'm moving into, so that the very first, I don't schedule anything in that first half of my morning, typically, unless I'm doing an interview in India here. But typically I save my mornings where I work on the most important and non-urgent things. And then I save my afternoons for appointments and meetings and calls. That way I can focus on being like, if I can feel like the rest of my day is thrown away after noon, after lunch, it's okay, because I took that morning and I focused on me and what I was needing to make sure that I move my life forward, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So even I'm really happy that the kind of ideation or the kind of ideas that you have here with your morning routine. I share a very similar morning routine where, so also very rightly said, the morning routine starts with the evening before. It's like
Always.
if I sleep on time last night, if I sleep at 10 p.m. in the night, that's how I wake up at 5 in the morning, right? So that's how I begin my morning. And absolutely, I think this is what we share in common, where even I have my most important things in the morning. My
Yep.
phone is switched off
Yep.
until I finish my morning routine, until I finish my meditation, my yoga.
You
And
got it.
that's when I hit the office, my phone is turned on. I'm reachable then. I try to be non-reachable after 10 p.m. and my phone is off. And right now in India, the situation is such that it's totally locked down. It has been totally locked down in the last 3 months. However, before that, right the moment I enter my house from office, my phone used to be on airplane mode right away. And post that, I think being on social media also was one of the things where I had this rule of myself where I'm not on social media until 7 p.m. So that's one of the distractions, that like what you were talking about earlier
Totally.
today, how there are so many different things going on. And once you open your social media feed, you go on, and then, an hour just goes by.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how you schedule your day and how you schedule your entire week and get through it. And thank you for taking out your time in your morning routine here for this Instagram live. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you pretty much nailed it. I think the how to get a bulletproof plan is not all that challenging to understand. But then you have to have a very clear reason as to what's motivating you to even wake up. You seem very driven, you're on a mission, and that's why I feel like that contribution part, if you're not clear about what it is that your gifts are to give to the world, then you're not going to get your ass out of bed in the morning,
Yep.
So you have to get very clear about what's driving you. Otherwise, you might do a good morning or evening ritual for a couple of days and it's going to fail, because you're going to be like, what's the point, right? So kudos to you that you've got that dialed in, because you seem like you're a man on purpose, which is really, really cool. It's a great example.
Thank you. And, also about why we get up out of our bed in the morning. So maybe you've read Simon Sinek, Find Your Why, or his book series. So I've done both the series. I've read both the books. So there he says how important it is for you to find your why. For example, if we take this in the context of health and fitness. Okay, so why do I want to be healthy? So do we have a reason that is good enough to get me out of bed in the morning? So what's my reason? So a lot of people, their reason of getting fit and healthy is maybe to attract the opposite sex, or maybe it is, to get that dress to fit in or look good in Instagram photographs. So what is the why? So for me, why I want to be healthy, why I do, practice yoga every day in the morning is because I want to live 100 years. I want to play tennis with my grandkids. So that's my why. That's what jumps me out of bed in the morning at 5 a.m. to do yoga. So it's how connected I am or we are to our purposes that really, get us out of bed and get us to do. So it's very important to know that.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because the majority of people that I've talked to, who I've worked with, like, why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to get healthier? They're like, well, I'd like to look better. I'd like to feel better. I'd like to, fit into smaller clothing. That's all great, but at the end of the day, that's not like all that exciting. For you to say I can envision, if I were you, playing tennis with my grandkids. I can see like being a father to future children and playing with them in the yard, or hiking up mountains here in Colorado, or just being active in the way that I didn't have when I was growing up. And that fuels me enough to want to maintain that level of health. So it's got to be something that really hits a nerve for people. And if it doesn't, like, it should like either make you cry or at least make you like, feel that emotion well up inside you. And if you haven't gotten to the point, then you haven't gotten a deep enough why, in my humble
Yep.
opinion. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. It's got to make you jump out of bed in the morning first thing and get to
Yeah.
whatever you want to get to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this was awesome, Johnny. Thank you once again for your
Yeah.
valuable inputs and the bulletproof plan that we spoke about today.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I hope everything is fine with you, and I hope you're safe in Denver. And
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to see you someday. Maybe you come to India or in some other time zone.
I would love
And
it. I would love it. Thank you so much for
awesome,
having me.
awesome, awesome. And be safe for now. And
Thank
have a
you. You
great
too.
day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You too.